Hey guys, welcome to patternlab.london. Okay, so in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to create this bishop sleeve style, which is quite a dramatic, lovely look, which works great on dresses, tops, anything you like really. And today we're going to be using the, let's say, bodice block, or basic bodice block UK10 comes with its own sleeve, and this is the actual finished pattern. So basically I'm just going to open up my basic bodice block with sleeve. UK10. Obviously, you can use either Pattern Lab's, what do you call it, made to measure generated blocks. The bodice block itself doesn't actually matter in terms of dart manipulation, it's just all about the sleeve on this one, so you can pretty much draft any one you like. Otherwise, Design Lab also has quite a nice bodice block, which is derivative of the Pattern Lab blocks that you can use as well. So let's get started first of all. What I'm going to do is, because this is my existing, let's say, block that I've let's say downloaded, I don't want to actually destroy this or mess this up. I want to actually just copy this. So I'm just going to get my big selection tool here. Just going to copy, click and drag over all of this. I'm going to hit edit and then copy. Don't forget, if you've been following our other tutorials, copy is Command C and paste is Command V. I'm just going to create a new document in Adobe Illustrator. Once again, we have a whole range of digital pattern making tutorials in Adobe Illustrator on the patternlab.london courses page. So have a look at those first. It'll show you how to use all of these tools and also how to set up Adobe Illustrator for pattern making, specifically using these tools here. Anyway, first of all, I'm just going to create a new document. I'm going to have it 450 cm by 450 cm. You can use inches as well if you want to, but I'm going to go for cm. Let's click create. So obviously I copied that pattern. So I'm just going to go Command C to copy once it's all selected, and then Control V to paste. Now this is a 450 cm here, so this is quite a large space. Let's get my rulers. So this pattern is full scale. Let's just zoom in a little bit, and let's just rename this as well. So let's call this Bishop Sleeve. Oh dear, I can't type today. Pattern making tutorial UK10. Fantastic. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I don't need my bodice blocks at all. So I'm going to get my big selection tool, which is this black one here. You have the white one, which is direct, and you have your selection tool. I'm just going to grab these two and just move them off to the side here. Let's also get a bit of space for our sleeve block. So I'm going to zoom in, Command plus on your keyboard to zoom in, Command minus to zoom out. Once again, please follow those tutorials. They'll show you everything you need to know. Okay, so first of all, my big selection tool, I'm going to click on this entire pattern piece here. As you can see, everything is grouped, which is looking good. So I'm just going to go Object and then Ungroup. Okay, that means I can then simply edit the little bits and pieces that basically like the decorations. So I'm just going to move those away because we don't want them to get in the way when we're actually pattern making this sleeve. So I'm just going to click and just drag this off to the side here. We can maybe put them on there a little bit later on. Elbow line I'm going to get rid of completely, so small selection tool, click on the elbow line, hit backspace a few times. Okay, so first of all we're going to draft our cuff, okay, because obviously this style is all about creating, let me just get rid of this block here, don't save it. Let me just grab this image. Okay, so this style is all about these big, beautiful, voluptuous sort of like sleeves, and we have this little cuff as well that basically secures it to our sleeve, to our wrist, or to the woman's wrist. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to get my line color. So let's double click this. Let's get black. Okay, let's also make sure it's 1 point. That's looking good. I'm just going to go to my rectangle tool here, and I'm just going to click. And that brings up this dialog box that allows you to type in the width and height. So basically the width of a UK size 10, I believe the wrist is about 15.5 to 16 centimeters. So I'm going to use that. You can look that up on your measurement sheet. But I'm going to go, let's say, 16 centimeters. But I want this to be a little bit looser around the wrist. I don't want it to be so tight that she can't move the wrist. So I'm going to go 16 plus 1.5, let's say. If I click in this box, it'll automatically calculate that for me, so 17.5. Also, I want the height of my cuff to be about 3 centimeters. You can decide this, it's completely up to you. So I'm going to go 3 cm. Great, so this is 16 cm by 3 cm. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another square, and we need to have a little bit of an overlap, like a tab, which is where our button's going to be. So what I'm going to do is, in this little corner here, I'm going to click, I'm going to hit 3 cm, 3 cm, because it's we want to be equal to the depth. So let's click OK. Great, so now this is my actual cuff, and this is going to be the bit that overlaps on the opposite side where the button's going to go. So I'm going to simply get my big selection tool here. I'm going to click and drag over both of these. I'm going to go to my Pathfinder tool. You can also go Windows and then Pathfinder. I'm just going to go to the Unite. And when I click Unite, you can see that it's all one piece. However, if I use my small selection tool and I click on it, you can see that those little points are still there. This is the existing points of that square, and that's really helpful. So what I'm going to do is next I'm going to add some notches so I can actually locate that little point. I'm going to go to my line tool, which I am assuming, is it on here? It should be. Okay, it's in here, but essentially that shouldn't be in there. Hang on. There we go. We can then just drag that out. We should be able to. No, we can't. Okay, that's fine. Not a problem. You should have, if you set up your space correctly, you should have your line tool just out already. However, mine's hidden in the selection tool. So, for example, you see these little arrows here. Simply click and hold, and it'll show you what's in that little segment. So, I'm going to give my line selection tool. You can also hit the backspace on your keyboard as well. I'm just going to click. Let's find that point. I'm going to click on that point, see anchor, click on that point, and I'm going to go 1 cm because I'm going to add 1 cm seam allowance to this. And my angle is going to be 90 degrees, click OK. So that's my notch. You can see that it's in the correct location. So that just basically identified that this is the tab. Okay, so next my big selection tool. I'm just simply going to grab this square here, and I'm going to go Command C to copy, Command V to paste. I'm just going to paste that down. I'm just going to move that down to the bottom edge, make sure it's in place. I'm going to grab both of these, my big selection tool, and I'm going to unite. And if for some reason they don't unite, that's fine. Just go to your add anchor point tool over here and just simply add a point, and then let's say move that into the other space so they're overlapping. You see how that would be not overlapping, this would be overlapping. Simply select both of them and then unite. And we can just minus this point as well. Okay, and we can also minus these points. Okay, so now this is essentially, I'm doubling my cuff here, okay? So we have the actual cuff, but then we're doubling it over, which is why we've added this section down below. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw another line, so backslash on my keyboard. I'm going to draw a line in the middle of these two, so to basically just divide this up as a folded line. And then we're just going to go to 1 point, so my stroke options, dash line, let's make it 3010. That's the way that I identify a fold line. Okay, so it's looking good. Also, I'm going to get my small selection tool, or my big selection tool even. Just going to click on this little notch here. I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm just going to drag with my big selection tool where it should intersect, which is just there. And that's basically my notch on either side. So that's my cuff panel pretty much created, which is looking good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my big selection tool, click and drag, and I'm just going to go Object, and then, where is it? Group. I've actually already grouped it, but we just want to make sure that these are grouped. So for example, these are all individual elements at the moment. So I'm just going to get my big selection tool, click and drag over all of them, then go Object, and then go Group. Now it moves around as one solid item. So now I've created my cuff. What I need to do now is essentially start to draft the bottom hem of this sleeve. Now we've actually added 3 centimeters to the length of this sleeve, when really to actually stick to the existing proper sleeve length, which is from the sleeve head to the base or the hem of the sleeve, ideally the sleeve should finish at about here, because we've essentially added 3 centimeters, so we're going to remove 3 centimeters from this sleeve. But we also want to have a little bit of sort of like, we want the amount of volume we're adding here, we want it to be slightly longer anyway. So what I'm going to do is, instead of taking 3 cm off this sleeve, I'm only going to take about 1.5, so half the cuff in various places. So let's just get our little circle tool here, let's just draw a point. And I'm just going to place one here, so you can do that just by simply going Control C on your keyboard to copy and Control V to paste. Just going to paste one here. I'm also going to paste one at this end here. I'm also going to paste one here and also here as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these. So I'm going to big selection tool. I'm just going to click and drag over all of these items here, and I'm going to align them. Okay, so now these should all be aligned so they're proportionately distributed. And we do that just simply by clicking and dragging over them and then going up to our align tools up the top here and then clicking the horizontal distribute. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this point, and I'm also going to click this point, and we do that by getting the big selection tool, clicking on this point, holding down the shift key to queue up our selection, so we select both of them. I'm going to hit the backspace to move our point, and I'm going to go 0 horizontally, and I'm going to go minus 1.5, and this is half of our cuff. Hit copy. Great stuff. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing a line. We can actually remove these 2 points. So I'm going to get my pen tool, and I'm going to click on this point here. I'm going to go to this point here and this point here. Actually, no, sorry. We need to go from this point to this point to this point. And next I'm going to get my anchor point tool, I'm just going to click and drag to make this a nice smooth curve. I'm going to go roughly halfway between these 2 points. You see how that little point there? I'm just going to click and drag until about halfway between those 2 points, and you'll notice it does on the opposite side as well. Next I'm going to click on this point, and I'm just going to drag until we get to roughly this point here. Great stuff. So that's now the curvature of the bottom part of my sleeve. So as you can see, we have a slightly longer length in the back of the sleeve because this is the back. You can see this by the double notches. If we go to our bodice block, you see the back has 2 notches and the front has 1 notch. So this is the back, this is the front. We've now added, let's say 1.5 to the back, and we've reduced 1.5 from the front, which is looking good. So I'm just going to now get my big selection tool, and I'm just going to delete all of these points. We don't really need them anymore, apart from this one. And now I'm going to put in the little opening, or the little slit at the back. So let's have a look. So on the back of our sleeve, we have this little opening just here, which is where our button's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply click this point, my big selection tool. I'm going to click it. I'm going to hit the backspace, and I'm going to go up. It's up to you. I'm going to have an opening of about 6 centimeters. So I'm going to go -6 and hit copy to take it up. Then I'm going to get a little line. I'm just going to draw a line between these 2 points. And I can now get rid of these points. I don't need them anymore. Let's hit backspace. And then with my small selection tool, I'm just going to click on the outline of my sleeve here. And I'm going to get my scissor tool. I'm just going to snip and snip because we no longer need this bottom edge anymore. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, click, backspace. Next I want to join this hem to the bottom of my sleeve. So I'm just going to get my small selection tool, click and drag over those 2 points, right click, join. These 2, right click, join. And I can also move this point up, and this is fine. Okay, so it's looking good already. Next we're going to add a little bit of shaping to the elbow here, just to give a nice little slight curve. So next we're going to go to our little plus point. I'm going to hit plus and plus. And I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to click that line to find the point, click on the point, hit the enter key. I'm going to hit 1.5. I'm going to narrow it by about 1.5 because this is quite a wide sleeve as it is anyway. And let's just hit, not copy, sorry. Let's get that point, hit the enter key, and I'm going to go 1.5, 0 on the vertical, and hit OK. That's better. Do the same for this side. -1.5 because we're going towards the left, and hit OK. Lovely. Next I'm going to take this line here, and I'm going to go roughly, I'm going to mark a new one, roughly about 1/3 between this point and this point. And you can do that. This is a really easy way of copying. If you select the line, hold down the Option key or Alt key on your keyboard, you'll see how we've got a little plus icon appearing every time I hit that key. If I simply hold that key down, click and drag, you'll see that it copies the line. So essentially holding down the Alt key while something's selected, you can drag a new version of it. This works for anything. So for example, this here, if we hold down the Option key, we can drag and it will create a new one. So really helpful, really handy. Anyway, let's get back to our pattern. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, I'm going to click on this line, click on this point, and then I'm going to get my anchor point tool, I'm going to click and drag, and I'm just going to create a nice little bit of curvature here. Now, at the moment, it's a little bit all over the place. If I hold down the Shift key, it'll lock it to the diagonal and the horizontal and the vertical. So I'm going to lock it to the vertical axis, and I'm going to go down until the upper bezier, which is this little point here, meets that line. I can do the same on the opposite side, click and drag, holding down my Shift key. I'm just going to drag it to that line. So these should now both be identical. I'm just going to get rid of that line, and we can also move this in because this is our new elbow line with that lovely shaping. Right, so next we're actually going to move on to the main event, which is basically slashing this sleeve up. So first of all, I'm going to get a line. So I'm going to hit backspace on my keyboard, or once again, you'll be able to find it somewhere on this panel over here if you set your space up correctly. And we have a tutorial that shows you how to do that. Just look at the patternlab.london courses page. Let's go to my line segment tool. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to pretty much go, let's say, from the top of my pattern there. I'm also going to match it up with the edge there. I'm going to slightly higher than my pattern. I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag. I'm going to hold down the Shift key so it locks to the vertical. And there's my line, which is looking good. Also, we want to make sure that this isn't a dotted line, so let's go to our stroke, remove the dash, 1 point's absolutely fine. I'm going to click on this line here with my big selection tool. Click on this line with my big selection tool. I'm then going to simply hold down that Option key. You see how we're getting that double arrow appear. I'm going to click and drag. I'm also going to hold down the Shift key because then it drags perfectly. See, at the moment it's all over the place. Hold down the Shift key, it'll drag it along to the side. And let's go roughly about 1/6 the way across this sleeve panel. So now I've dragged it, I'm just going to hit Command D on my keyboard, and that duplicates the existing move. And we want to have 6 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's perfect. Now we want to basically distribute, we want to evenly slash this sleeve up. So I'm going to take this line here with my big selection tool. I'm just going to drag it until I meet that, let's say, sleeve point. Now I'm going to get my big selection tool, click and drag over these 6 lines, and I'm going to go to my align, and this will horizontally distribute these lines. So we know that the distance between this point and this point is even across the board, which is looking good. So next, I want to basically get rid of these outer lines. We don't need them anymore. We just simply use them so we could distribute across the sleeve. They were markers. So let's get my big section tool, click and drag, and then hit backspace on my keyboard a few times. So click and drag to select it, backspace a few times on my keyboard. Okay, so these are my lines that I'm going to use to slash my block. I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool to do this. But first of all, we're going to select these lines with the big selection tool. We're going to go to Object, and then we're going to expand. And we have to expand these lines because now, essentially, they're no longer a line. You see how they're a block? You can't actually slash using the Pathfinder tool with lines. You have to do it using objects. So we've just turned them into objects. And I'll show you how to do that again. So just going to select these lines, go Object, and then Expand. Click Fill and Stroke, OK. And now you can see that they're objects, which is great. Let's just go back. You can hit Command Z or Control Z on your keyboard to go back. OK, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to get my big section tool. I'm going to select this line here, and I'm also going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm also going to select the outline of my sleeve. And as you can see here, we've just got that line in the outline. Next, I'm going to go to my Pathfinder tool. You can also find that window and then Pathfinder. And I'm going to use the minus front. So basically, I'm removing this object from the back. So I'm slashing this block up using this line, which is really handy. So once again, select this line, hold down the Shift key, select the actual block, and then we're going to go minus front. And as you can see, it has separated that completely, which is really handy. However, at the moment, they're grouped. Okay, so for some reason, whenever you slash something, it's always grouped, and we need to ungroup these. So just select it, and just go Object, and then Ungroup. So now, you can see, when we click it, they're independent, which is really handy. Okay, so next we're going to slash this block with this line. I'm going to do this all the way along. But first of all, it's really important that this line is above this one. And every single time you do that slash, it will basically bring this whole section to the front. So if I would now do the same thing we did before, without bringing this line to the front, we would have an issue. So if that happens to you, just make sure. So get your big section tool, click on this line, then go Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. You can also use, you see how you've got these shortcuts here? This is what I use to be very quick at pattern cutting. So just simply click Bring to Front. But you can also do that with Shift, Command, and then square bracket. That's my one on the Mac. So we just brought this to the front, and then we're going to simply select both these lines. So once again, big selection tool, select this, and then hold down the Shift key, select this, and then we're going to minus front, and that's worked perfectly. Once again, these are grouped, so you want to go to Object, Ungroup. For me, this is Shift Command G to ungroup things, so I'm going to do that as a shortcut. So once again, I'm going to click on this line here, and then going to bring it to the front. So for me, that's Shift Command close square bracket. And then I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to minus with the Pathfinder tool, same with this one. I'm going to bring this to the front, so Shift Command close square bracket. This is also grouped as well, so I'm going to go Object, Ungroup, and then going to select these two, and then going to minus. Once again, these are grouped. I'm going to ungroup them. I'm going to bring this one to the front. I'm using shortcuts here. And then simply select these two lines, and then minus. So now, if I ungroup those, we should have a whole bunch of different sections, and you really don't want to be doing what I'm doing right now, but it's just to show you that we've slashed this block up into lots of different pieces, which is great. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to start to unite these pieces, or at least you see how these elements here are separate. We're going to group them. But first, let's go to the elbow line. Now I want to maintain the elbow line on these panels as I start to slash and rotate them open. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, I'm going to click on this line, I'm going to get my scissor tool, and I'm going to cut literally at these points here. Okay, I'm just slashing that line so we can use it on each individual panel piece. And also I think this line's probably grouped, so big selection tool, click on that line, yeah, it's all grouped. So let's go Object, Ungroup them, so then they're individual items that we can then group to this panel. So for example, get my big selection tool, I'm now going to link this line and this panel together, go Object and then Group, You see, so now this is a grouped item, really handy. Also with these ones, I'm going to get my big selection tool, I'm going to click and drag over those 2 points, and also the elbow line. Okay, there's one thing to mention here. These points, this little black ball, is actually grouped with these items as well. So I need to ungroup these as well. So Object, Ungroup. Now I can select that without selecting these items as well. So if I want to, let's say, make a grouping, big selection tool, click and drag over these items, I can now simply go Object and then Group. I've done it automatically, or I've done it with a shortcut. Same again for this one. Let's just click and drag over these elements here. I'm just going to hit Control or Command G on my keyboard to group. Same for this one. Click and drag, Command G to group. These ones, and also don't forget your little slit here, and then Command G to group. Select Command G to group. So now, as you can see, they are independent pieces, but they've actually got the information they need. So for example, and that's a really good test actually. We haven't quite got that one. So let's just reselect that and then hit Command G to group. Let's go back though. Okay. Command G to group. So once again, these are all individual elements now, but we don't want to open them up. We want to keep them in this beautiful shape, which is our sleeve. Okay, so next what we'll do is we're going to start to spread these slashed panels. And this is completely up to you. It depends on how much volume you want to add to your sleeve. I'm going to do about 6 on the back and 3 on the front. So let's go to my line tool, line segment tool. I'm going to give it a line color or a stroke color of, let's go for Pattern Lab Blue. And I'm just going to click to create a line. So the length I'm going to do 6 centimeters, and I want the rotation to be 0, so in this direction. Click OK. There's my line. I've highlighted it blue so we can see. I'm going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to click on this endpoint and drag it, okay, to this point here. Now what we do is we want to basically open these up one panel at a time, but we want to start from the outside and work our way in. So we're going to be opening this section here, and I'll demonstrate that very quickly. We're going to be rotating this section open, and I'm doing it by 6 centimeters. This could be 4 cm, it could be 2, it could be 1. It depends how much volume you want, but I'm using 6 here. You can always calculate this by adding it up. So I'm going to do 6, 6, 6, 3, and 3. So you could also simply measure the distance of these lines and then add all of those together to find out the full volume. But this is a tutorial, so I'm just kind of doing it quite quickly because we don't want to be here for too long. So let me just do that again. So once again, we've drawn our 6 centimeter line using the line tool. Let's just do that. 6 cm, I'm going to go 0 for the angle, click OK. I'm just going to move that to this point here. That's great. So we know that we're going to move this open to this point, and that's just simply a guide for us. So I'm going to get my big selection tool, I'm going to click on this element, don't forget it's been grouped. I'm going to go to my rotation tool, I'm going to click on this point here. I'm simply just going to click and drag to open this up, and you can see that I'm just going along that line till I hit the end of that point, which is great. So this is our first panel opened up by 6 centimeters. I'm then going to simply, big selection tool, click on this line and just drag it over to the next section, which is about there. Oops, we can zoom in if it's hard to find. Once again, zooming in is Command plus and to zoom in, and Command minus on your keyboard to zoom out. So we now have that new placement. This time, instead of taking just the one panel, because if I just rotate one, it's going to be a bit odd, you see. So I'm going to take both. I'm going to get my big selection tool, click and drag over these 2 elements. This is why it's important to have these grouped, because it just makes it easier for you to select them. I'm going to get my rotation tool, I'm going to click at this point here. I'm just going to click and drag that out. Let's zoom in. Click and drag it out until we essentially intersect the end of that line. So I know that that is 6 centimeters. Great. Next we're going to work on the front. This has been the back, and we've opened this by 6 cm both areas here. So we've got a lot more volume on the back. I want to do about half that on the front. So if you're doing, let's say, 4 on the back, you could do 2 on the front. I'm using 6, so I'm going to go 3. And that just basically means you have a bit more volume at the back of the sleeve so it hangs better, and at the front it's a little bit, let's say, tighter. So I'm going to just simply draw a line again. So let's go to my line tool. Click a point, I'm going to add 3 this time, and my rotation 0, which is good. Click OK. And now I'm going to drag this line to this point and do exactly the same as we did on the opposite side. So get my big selection tool, click and drag, get my rotation tool, click on this point, rotate out, there we go, and then I'm just simply going to move this to this point here. Once again, I'm going to click and drag over all of these pieces. I'm going to get my rotation tool, I'm going to click on this point, and I'm going to drag that out. And we're also going to add 6 centimeters to the center here, or to the center of my sleeve. However, I want to do 3 on either side. I don't want to add 6 cm just on this side. I want to distribute it evenly. So I'm going to use this 3 cm marker. I'm going to place it here. I'm then going to select these 3 panels, go to my rotation tool, click on that point at the top, and I'm going to rotate that out by 3. I'm going to get that point again, click and drag over to this side. I'm going to get these 3 panels, I'm going to get my rotation tool, click, and then drag that out 3 centimeters. And that is the full spread of my bishop sleeve, which is looking gorgeous. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we want to basically actually draft this sleeve. So at the moment it's just a bunch of cut up, slashed up pattern pieces. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm just going to select across all of these panels here, and that should select pretty much anything or everything. I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool, and I'm going to pick up this little dashed line. So I'm going to basically add this dashed line attribute to all of these pieces to make it more of a template. So I'm just going to go to my eyedropper tool with these pieces selected and just click on that line. And then when I click off, you can see we now have the dashed line. I can get rid of this existing this existing sleeve, center of sleeve line as well. So I'm going to go to small selection tool, click on this, and then simply backspace a few times. So now this is my template, and I'm going to start to draft a proper sleeve from this. So first of all, I'm going to go to select all. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to go object and then lock selection. And this just allows me to, it is a template now, I can't edit it or move it or have any problems with it. Next I'm going to get my pen tool, so just up here, click on my pen tool. I'm then going to go to, let's have a line color of black, click OK. I'm going to go to my stroke, and let's make it 2 so it's quite clear. I'm going to start off at this point, so let's zoom in, let's do the sleeve head first. I'm going to start at this point, and then going to click at the sleeve head, and then I'm going to click at the other underarm point. I'm then going to go to my anchor point tool. I'm going to click and drag. And instead of, see how it's a little bit all over the place, I'm going to hold down the shift key, and that will lock it to the horizontal. I'm just going to pull it out ever so slightly. This is all about, oh hang on, first of all this is a dashed line. Let's just remove the dash. So, sorry, let's do it again. So I'm just going to pull this out, holding down the shift key. I actually do the same on the opposite side. Now this is going to be a little bit of experimentation here. So once I've done the top, roughly about halfway out, I'm just going to click and drag on the bottom. I'm just going to try and, okay, that's perfect first time. But essentially you might not get this right first time. You might have to, you see for example, the top is a little bit too heavy here, so I'm just going to move that in. So I'm just going to simply, with my curve anchor point tool, let's do that again. I'm going to click on this point and drag. There we go, just going to click and drag to about there. And then this little handle here, it's a little bit too much, so with my convert anchor point tool, I'm just going to click and drag that in. But don't forget, hold down the shift key to lock it. Just going to drag that in. Maybe this one needs adjusting ever so slightly. So this one wasn't perfect. It's just about creating a nice even curve. You want to make sure that these points, your line goes through these points, so you don't have to move them. And so they're accurate to the existing basic block. Because obviously these points match up with these points. So try and draft a sleeve head it matches the existing curvature, but it also goes through these points, which is really helpful. Okay, so next we're going to do the bottom sleeve, or the hem of our sleeve. So to create a nice, for these blocks to actually connect neatly, we want to kind of create a 90-degree angle out from this. I'll explain why in a minute. So I'm going to get my square tool. I'm just going to click at this point here, and let's do about, I don't know, 6 cm. It doesn't really matter. So I now have a square at this point. I'm going to get my big selection tool, I'm going to click on it. And I'm going to get my rotation tool, I'm going to click and rotate that until it hits that underarm seam. And the reason why is because we would like to have a nice 90-degree angle here, because when we join this seam and this seam, we want a nice even join. And I'll move this over to the opposite side. So once again, big selection tool, just click on this point, hold down the option key, see how we're duplicating that now with the 2 little arrows, and then just release when we get to this point. Rotation tool, click, and then just simply rotate that in. Great stuff. So next what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go select all, object, lock, and that just locks these so I can't select them. Let's just do that again. So I can't select them, it's a template. I'm then going to get my pen tool. I'm going to make sure it's 2 points. I'm going to click at this point. I'm also going to go roughly try and find that middle section here, and I'm also going to click at this point as well. Oh, that's a little bit too far over. Let's do that again. There we go. Then I'm going to get my Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to roughly drag out. You see where that dotted line intersects that 90-degree angle. So ideally I want to use this line here, and I want to use this line, and where these two intersect is where my Bezier, these little handles are called Bezier handles. That's where I want it to kind of go to. Same with this side. Just click and drag. We want to use that 90-degree angle, but kind of like roughly where that intersects. You can have it longer if you want, but I would suggest probably about there, which is great. I'm now going to go Object and then Unlock All. I'm just going to get rid of these little templates. That was just simply to give us a 90-degree angle from this side seam. Same on this side as well. Next, I'm going to get my Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. Now, if I do it perfectly horizontal, it's not really going to work because we have a lot less here and a lot more here. So instead, I'm going to click and drag and go slightly higher on the front and slightly lower on the back. Okay, you see how we're getting a slightly better curve here. But also, I want this to be slightly longer or lower. So I want to extend this Bezier handle out. Now I can do it by eye, but I might wiggle it around. It might cause a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my line tool. While that's still selected, I can still see this Bezier. I'm going to get my line tool. I'm just going to click and drag from that point to that point. And this basically gives me an extension line. So I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to click and drag that out. We can even make it a dotted line. So now, when I select my line with the small selection tool, like this, I can go to my Convert Anchor Point tool, and I can click and drag and use that line, you see, to give me a nice clear path. And as you can see, we're getting a much nicer curve on this side, while still maintaining that smaller curve on this side. And once again, you see how that line is nice and straight all the way through? That is what we're looking for, okay? Nothing like this, or nothing like that, or like this, for example. So that's why we're drawing that nice straight curve, or that nice straight line. And I can just now, small selection tool, just simply click this, hit backspace a few times to get rid of it. So now we have drafted the upper sleeve and the sleeve head and the hem. So instead of having to redraw this side seam here, or this underarm seam, I'm just simply going to cut it and join it to the top and bottom. So once again, just make sure that everything is unlocked, which it is, unlock all. I'm going to get my small selection tool, I'm going to pick up this element here, I'm going to get my scissor tool, and I'm going to snip here and here. I'm going to do the same for the opposite side. Get my small selection tool, select this element, and then going to go to the scissors, cut, and cut. And then let's go to our small selection tool here. I'm just going to simply, where is it? Let's zoom in. I'm going to select this line. You see that point? I'm going to click on the point. So selecting the line allows you to find the point. I'm going to click that point. I'm going to hold down my Shift key. I'm going to click this line, and you see how I see that point? I'm going to click that point as well. I'm just going to right click and then go join. What we're doing here is we're essentially isolating those points because there's another point here from this line. So if I just simply click and drag, right click join, it's going to have a problem. You see, it's not going to join, it's not going to do anything at all because this point is here. So what I'm going to do is, getting my small selection tool, I'm going to click on this line, click on that point, hold down the Shift key, click on this line, click on that point. So I've now isolated those 2 points, right click, join. And that has been joined. Let's do the same on this side as well. I'm going to get this point. Let's zoom in. So I'm going to select this line here. Unfortunately, there are actually 2 points here, which is a little bit annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the line, go to my minus anchor point tool, and delete that little point. And next, I'm going to click that line, click the point, hold down the Shift key, select this line, select that point, right click, join. Great. And you know what? Because we pretty much have a full item here, I don't really need to join these 2 points. I can just go to the Pathfinder and then click Unite. So once it's selected, just hit Unite, and now that's one finished off block, which is looking gorgeous. Okay, so what I could do is just simply lift this outline, and obviously all the points included with it, and place it somewhere else. So for example, let's just lock all that, and then let's just simply grab this and go copy, paste, and that didn't work. That's fine. Let's figure out why. Okay, so ideally what I could do with my small selection tool, I could click and drag over these elements. You see how I'm selecting all those individual elements there, and I could go Object and then Lock Selection. which means that if I get my big selection tool and I click and drag, I should only have the outline because I've simply locked all of the inside lines here. And I could just simply go copy and then paste. It's still not doing it. It doesn't matter. It's not a problem. What we're going to do, actually, what I wanted to do with this concept is to show you the outline without those lines in between, and we can do that. It's just slightly difficult in this situation for some reason. But instead, what we'd actually like to do is keep these lines in place because it's good for us to see how this block has been separated up. But we do have some little rogue elements like this little bit down here. So what I'm going to do is instead, I'm going to start to remove these and clean it up. So with my small selection tool, I'm going to click on this line, go to my scissor tool and just snip. Small selection tool, click on this element. You see how it's been snipped away from it. Hit backspace a few times. Same with this one, small selection tool. I'm just going to snip, snip, get rid of that line. Also, let's just move that up. So once again, small selection tool, just click on the line and drag it up. Be careful not to move it. In other words, move it in either left or right direction. You just want to go through that line. So click and drag through the line. Next one, let's go to our scissor tool. Snip, snip. Let's get rid of that existing line. We can also drag this down to the hemline. We can then go snip, snip. So I'm going to use a few little shortcuts on my keyboard here just to demonstrate. So if I hit A on my keyboard, it brings up the small selection tool. If I hit V on my keyboard, it brings up the black or big selection tool. So A, and I'm going to hit C on my keyboard, that's cut, snip, and I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to go back to the little selection tool. So let's do that again, sorry. So I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to bring up the little selection tool. I'm then going to hit C on my keyboard to bring up the snip tool. I'm going to snip it here and here. I'm then going to hit A on my keyboard to bring up the little selection tool. Click, backspace a few times. Let's just drag that point down. So we've done the hem. Now let's work on the top, because at the moment you can see we've got this little dotted line. You can see it a bit clearer here. So what I'm going to do is, because I don't want to snip this line here, because it will get in the way, I'm going to select it. I'm going to go Object and then Lock Selection. And then I'm going to start snipping these out. So as you can see here, I'm going to get my small selection tool, so A on my keyboard, click. I'm going to hit C to get the scissor tool, snip, A to get the little selection tool, select it and then backspace. So once again, C, delete, going to select that line, hit C to snip, A, selection tool, delete, snip, snip, A, select it, delete it. Also, we can move this up ever so slightly to make it neat. So then C to snip, A to get my selection tool, delete. Same again here, C to snip, delete, and that is a far cleaner sleeve block, which is looking really nice. Okay, so that's pretty much it when it comes to our sleeve. We do actually want to mark in the center of the sleeve and also our elbow line. So to do that, I'm going to go to Select All, Object, and then Lock Selection. I'm going to get my pen tool, and I'm going to start at this point. I'm going to go to the center point here, and I'm also going to go to this point as well. And let's just make sure, let's make that 1 point, dash line's already there. Let's make it black so it stands out. And then let's click off. There we go. Let's get my Convert Anchor Point tool, and let's click and drag. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to lock it to the horizontal. And I'm just going to try and mimic the existing lines. Lovely. So for example, let's click and drag. I'm looking at the right hand side here. The right hand side is on point, the left isn't, so I'm just going to go back, click, hold down the Shift key, and move that out. Great. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to draw our center line. So I'm going to get my line tool. I'm going to click at this point here, and then hold down the Shift key to lock it to the vertical. Go all the way down my block. Let's zoom in. And then just move that back up. Okay, great. So this is my elbow line, this is my center line. I'm then going to go to Object and then Unlock All. I'm going to select my center line. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, select my elbow line. I'm going to go Object, Lock Selection. Only because I want to, A, get rid of the existing elbow line. You see here, I've got these little bits underneath. So just get my small selection tool. I'm just going to hit backspace and remove. You don't have to do this. This is all just basically creating this beautifully clean, perfect pattern. Okay, great. Next what I want to do is I'm going to get these lines here, and because I've locked this center line, this elbow line, you can see that I'm not actually selecting them, which is great. And for this, I'm going to go to transparency, which is up here. I'm just going to go to, let's say, let's make it 70. So they really are faint. There you go. So it doesn't really interfere with the rest of your pattern. Let's then go object and then unlock everything. Great. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're finished. We're going to now start to add seam allowance to this and obviously add our labels back in. So what we'll do is let's go to the big selection tool. You can hit V on your keyboard to get the big selection tool. I'm simply going to click and drag this back into this little area here. I'm also going to drag in this panel, this decoration, and also we can put in our size 10 as well. Place that there, move that to the front. And we can also rename this as well. So instead of being a basic bodice block, this could be, for example, bishop sleeve. Oh, block, we've already got block. And this can be sleeve panel UK 10, busties is all there, that's fine. Perfect. And obviously we want to add some labeling to our cuff as well. So let's just get some text here. We can go cuff panel. And we can also have fold line. You can add as much decoration or information as you like. I want to keep this quite short. There we go. So what we're going to do next is basically our big selection tool. Just want to make sure that these are all grouped now. So I'm going to select and drag over all of this. I'm then going to go object and then group. This is just so it's one item. And same for this one as well. Let's just select all those elements. Make sure you get everything in. And then you can go object and then group. And that way it's one element, which is great. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is, let's move this out the way. I'm going to then get my big selection tool, I'm going to drag my blocks over. There we go, looking good, let's neaten it up. Let's maybe align these, that's it. And next we're going to add our seam allowance. So once again, one click seam allowance, really easy. Going to get my small selection tool, I'm going to click on this panel outline, I'm going to hold down the shift key, click on this panel outline, then go object, path, offset path, 1 cm, click OK. Then let's basically make the stroke width, let's make it 2 because this is our cut line. Then small selection tool, going to get the inside just like that, and then let's make this 1 because this is our cut line. Oops, 1, there we go. Fabulous, so that is essentially our finished bishop sleeve. Oh, hang on, we need to do the cuff as well. Object, path, offset path, 1, OK. Let's then make that 2 points. Voila. Okay, so that is essentially, also we should probably add a notch here as well, because that is obviously where we're going to be opening up that sleeve. Also, let's mark these notches, make them slightly thicker. There we go. Okay, great. So that is essentially it for our bishop sleeve. So yeah, let us know what you think, and yeah, enjoy. Thank you for watching.